Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is keep walking when no one follows. There is a moment many people don't talk about because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It doesn't come with a breakdown or a big decision. It's quieter than that. It's the moment you realize that your life doesn't feel wrong, but it also doesn't feel honest anymore. You're still moving, still showing up, still doing what's expected, yet something inside you has gone silent, and you start to wonder, not loudly but persistently, is this really my path? Or am I just afraid to step off it? This is often where walking alone begins, not as a choice you proudly announce, but as a subtle shift in awareness. You notice you're no longer comforted by the noise around you, the conversations feel repetitive. The validation feels thin, the applause doesn't land the way it used to, and instead of feeling grateful, you feel uneasy because gratitude has quietly turned into obligation. That unease is not failure, it's awareness waking up. Most people panic at this stage. They assume something is wrong with them. They label it confusion, restlessness, or ingratitude. They rush to fix it by staying busy, staying connected, staying agreeable. But what if this discomfort isn't a problem to solve? What if it's an invitation to listen more closely? When you begin to walk alone, it can feel like losing direction, when in truth you're finally sensing your own compass. For a long time, many of us are guided by external signals: approval, belonging, expectations, survival. Those signals are loud and they're convincing. They tell you who to be, how fast to move, and when you're enough. But eventually there comes a point where those signals start to contradict what your body knows. You feel tired in ways sleep doesn't fix. You feel successful yet strangely empty. You feel surrounded yet unseen. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're becoming more honest. Walking alone doesn't start with confidence. It starts with confusion. It starts with questions you can't answer yet. It starts with the unsettling realization that the life you've built may have been shaped more by fear than by truth. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of standing still while everyone else seems to move forward. And so you begin to notice the gap, the space between who you are and who you've been performing as. That gap can feel terrifying because it's uncharted. There are no clear signs, no applause, no reassurance. Just you, your thoughts, and the quiet pull towards something you can't yet name. This is the part people rush through. They want certainty before they move. They want clarity before they let go, but clarity doesn't come first. Awareness does. Awareness is simply the courage to admit, something in me knows this isn't the whole story. Walking alone at this stage isn't about isolation. It's about honesty. It's about allowing yourself to stop pretending that the discomfort will disappear if you ignore it long enough. It's about recognizing that staying where you are, just to avoid being alone, is a far deeper loneliness than solitude could ever be. There is grief here too, though we rarely call it that. Grief for the version of yourself that tried so hard to belong. Grief for the time spent shrinking, adapting, staying silent. Grief for the realization that some paths you walked faithfully were never truly yours. That grief doesn't mean those years were wasted. It means you were doing the best you could with the awareness you had. And now awareness has expanded. Walking alone means accepting that not everyone will understand this shift because they're not meant to. It means releasing the idea that you must justify your inner knowing to be allowed to follow it. It means trusting that confusion can be a form of wisdom, and that stillness can be more truthful than constant motion. You may feel behind at this stage. You may compare yourself to others who seem settled, certain, and surrounded. But what you're actually doing is slowing down long enough to hear yourself think. That's not falling behind, that's recalibrating. This awareness asks very little of you at first. It doesn't demand big decisions. It doesn't require burning bridges or dramatic exits. It simply asks you to notice, to pause, to stop betraying the quiet signals your body and heart have been sending for years. Because before you can walk with courage, before you can change, before you can grow, you have to admit where you are. Not where you wish you were, not where others think you should be, but where you truly are. And that honesty, as uncomfortable as it feels, is the first act of self-respect. You are not lost in this moment. You are standing at the edge of awareness, and awareness is where every authentic journey begins, when you begin to walk alone. One of the hardest lessons is learning to be seen by yourself. We spend so much of our lives seeking validation, approval, recognition, a nod, a smile, a word that confirms we matter. And yet the truth is, most of that validation comes from the outside. Most of it is temporary, and most of it doesn't get to the core of who we are. Walking alone forces you to turn inward, and that can feel like staring into a mirror you've avoided for years. At first, it's uncomfortable. You notice all the corners of yourself you've tucked away, parts you thought were unworthy, parts you thought you had to fix, hide, or ignore. You feel exposed in a way that no one else can witness. That exposure can feel lonely, but it's necessary. Because to grow, to really grow, you have to meet yourself fully. You have to see the fear, the doubt, the shame, and still decide to stay present. You have to become your own witness. Most of us fear this confrontation. We distract ourselves with noise, conversation, work, scrolling endlessly, keeping busy, anything to avoid the silence that will inevitably bring up the questions we have been avoiding. Who am I if no one applauds me? Who am I if no one is watching? Who am I if I stop performing? The answers are rarely simple. They don't arrive on schedule. They are slow. They are subtle, and yet they are more truthful than any compliment or critique we could receive. Being seen by yourself doesn't mean you suddenly feel complete or fearless. It means you accept that fear and self-doubt are part of the process, and you allow yourself to exist alongside them. You begin to understand that strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the willingness to face it head-on, quietly, on your own terms. You begin to realize that no one else can do this for you. No one else can confirm your worth. That recognition must come from within. In this solitude, you start to notice patterns, the ways you have silenced yourself, the ways you have minimized your voice to make others comfortable, the ways you have ignored your own boundaries for the sake of belonging, and it's painful, it's heartbreaking, but it is also liberating. For the first time, you realize that being alone doesn't have to mean being lonely. It can mean being authentic. It can mean learning to trust yourself. There is a quiet power in sitting with yourself without distraction, in listening to the thoughts that have been crowded out, in writing down the truths you have been afraid to say out loud, in noticing the subtle nudges of your heart and allowing them to guide you. This is not a performance. There is no audience. There is no judgment. There is simply the act of showing up for yourself every day, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's slow, even when it feels like nothing is happening, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. Confidence is not the loud kind that demands attention. It is the quiet kind that knows your worth without external proof. It is the steady assurance that your voice matters, that your boundaries matter, that your choices matter. Being seen by yourself is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, and reality is messy, beautiful, and entirely yours. Walking alone teaches you this truth. The most important gaze you will ever encounter is your own, and when you finally meet it with honesty, compassion, and courage, you begin to understand that the solitude you feared is actually a sanctuary, a place where clarity grows, self-trust deepens, and the foundation for real, lasting change begins. Because only when you can see yourself fully without apology, without disguise, without validation from anyone else, can you truly walk into the life you are meant to live. Choosing courage over approval is one of the quietest yet most radical acts a person can take. It doesn't always look dramatic, and it rarely comes with applause. In fact, the world often responds with confusion, doubt, or even criticism when you start making decisions that honor your truth rather than the expectations of others. And that is precisely why it is so difficult. Because our brains are wired to seek belonging, to crave approval, to avoid conflict, to be seen as right or acceptable. But courage asks you to step beyond all of that. It asks you to walk a path where no one can guarantee that you will be understood, liked, or rewarded. At first, it is terrifying. Every decision feels heavy. Every boundary you set feels like a test, as though the universe is silently asking, will you stay in line or will you break? And yet, courage isn't about being fearless. It isn't about having a perfectly calm mind or always making the right choice. Courage is about moving forward even when fear is present, even when shame whispers that you're wrong, even when self-doubt tempts you to retreat. It is the willingness to listen to your own inner voice, to honor it, and to act on it without waiting for validation. Most people underestimate how much courage it takes to simply say no without justification, to make a choice without explaining it, to protect your time, your energy, and your heart. It's subtle, almost invisible, and yet it changes everything. Each small act of courage, each quiet insistence on your own truth, chips away at the fear that has been running your life. With every step, you discover that approval from others was never the goal. It was only a distraction from the work you needed to do within yourself. When you choose courage over approval, you also confront deep feelings you've been avoiding. You feel the disappointment in others. You feel the loneliness of standing apart. You feel the questions that arise when people don't understand your decisions. And it is uncomfortable, it is humbling, but it is also liberating, because finally you are acting in alignment with your values, your vision, and your worth. Finally, your life begins to reflect the truth of who you are, not the reflection of who others want you to be. Courage asks you to trust yourself even when the path ahead is Unclear. It asks you to accept that making mistakes is part of the process. It asks you to embrace the tension between fear and possibility, between comfort and growth. It asks you to lean into discomfort and recognize that discomfort is often the signal that you are moving towards something meaningful. Every choice made in quiet courage builds resilience, strengthens character, and deepens self-respect. And there is a profound freedom in this. The freedom to live without constant explanation. The freedom to protect your energy. The freedom to honor your boundaries. The freedom to make decisions that feel right for you, even if they feel wrong to someone else. This freedom doesn't come overnight, and it doesn't come without practice. But every small act of courage compounds. Every quiet insistence that your truth matters becomes a foundation you can stand on when life tests you in ways you never imagined. Courage over approval is not about defiance or rebellion. It is about clarity. It is about choosing the voice of your heart over the noise of external expectations. It is about trusting that you can survive being misunderstood, that you can grow through discomfort, and that your worth is not measured by anyone else's applause. And when you reach this point, you realize that approval is optional, but courage is essential, because courage is the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the quiet, steady, unshakable decision to walk forward, even when the world does not understand, and in walking forward, you discover a truth that no one can give you, that living your life fully, authentically, and bravely is the most powerful approval you will ever need. Allowing the old life to fall away is one of the hardest truths we encounter when we begin walking alone. It is not sudden. It does not come with fireworks or clear signals. Instead, it comes quietly like a whisper in the night, asking you to notice what no longer serves you, what no longer fits, what you have been holding on to simply because it is familiar. And it can feel terrifying because letting go often means confronting loss, the loss of people. Routines, expectations, and versions of yourself you thought were permanent. But it is only by releasing what no longer belongs that you create space for the new to arrive. We resist this change because it asks for grief, and grief is uncomfortable. It asks us to mourn the parts of our life that we invested in, the roles we played, the dreams we once chased, and the relationships that shaped our identity. And yet, the grief is not a punishment. It is a signal. It is a marker that shows us we were fully alive in that season, that we gave it our best, that we cared deeply. Without acknowledging the grief, we cannot truly move forward. We carry the past like a weight that bends our shoulders, instead of letting it teach us the lessons it came to offer. This stage often brings shame. Shame whispers that leaving behind people, places, or patterns makes you selfish. It tells you that change is a betrayal. But the truth is that refusing to let go is the greater betrayal to yourself, to your growth, to your soul. There is bravery in saying, I can no longer fit into this life, and I will not apologize for needing to change. There is courage in facing the discomfort of endings without knowing exactly what comes next. It is a delicate balance between holding on to gratitude for the past and releasing the expectations that no longer align with who you are becoming. The process is messy. Some days it feels like backward steps, like regret, like fear is winning. Other days it feels like freedom, clarity, and lightness you have never known. This is normal. Growth is not linear, and transformation is never tidy. Every small act of letting go, saying no, walking away, refusing to explain, releasing control is a step toward a life that aligns with your truth. Each step is proof that you are learning to honor yourself, even when the world does not understand. You begin to notice patterns that no longer serve you. You realize that some people cannot walk with you into your new life, and that is okay. You notice habits, beliefs, and routines that keep you small, and you release them. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the space you create begins to fill not with external validation, not with noise or approval, but with clarity, with possibility, with the quiet knowing that you are becoming who you are meant to be. Letting go also teaches patience. The new life you are stepping into is not fully formed, and it cannot be rushed. There are gaps, uncertainties, and moments where the future feels like a void. But the void is not empty, it is fertile ground. It is where your intuition, your courage, and your self-trust grow stronger. It is where you learn to rely on your own guidance rather than seeking answers from outside. The old life falling away is not a loss. It is the preparation for what is next. And there is freedom in this letting go. Freedom to live without apology, without carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. Freedom to build boundaries that honor your energy, your heart, and your time. Freedom to redefine success, love, and belonging on your own terms. Freedom to be messy, imperfect, and human without fear of judgment. Every act of release, no matter how small, is a step toward the person you are becoming, a person who no longer fears change because you have learned to trust yourself. Ultimately, allowing the old life to fall away is not about endings, it is about transformation. It is about understanding that growth requires loss, that courage requires discomfort, and that the life you are walking toward can only be lived fully when you have let go of what no longer fits. And in embracing this, you realize something remarkable. What feels like a void today is the beginning of everything you are meant to become tomorrow. Becoming stronger in the quiet is a paradox many people don't understand. We live in a world that rewards noise, applause, and visibility, yet the most profound strength often grows where no one is watching. It grows in the moments when you resist the urge to perform for others, when you sit with your own thoughts, when you make decisions without anyone else validating them, when you face fear without fanfare, and when you quietly keep moving forward despite uncertainty. Strength in the quiet is not flashy, but it is unshakable. This stage often comes after months or years of struggle, of walking alone, of letting go, and of choosing courage over approval. It comes when you have learned to rely on your own voice, your own intuition, and your own inner compass. And yet, it is not always comfortable. You may still feel the pull of comparison, the whispers of doubt, the temptation to return to old patterns simply because they feel familiar. But each time you resist, each time you choose your own path over conformity, you reinforce the truth that your strength does not depend on recognition. It depends on consistency, courage, and self-trust. One of the hardest lessons here is patience. Growth does not announce itself with fireworks. You may not see the impact immediately. You may not receive applause, praise, or acknowledgement from the outside. And if you are